Jimmy, what are you doing?
I'm practicing sucking. You know, when you have to clean your tank, you gotta suck. Don't you suck?
I make it a personal goal every day not to suck, Jimmy. But if you want to suck, knock yourself out.
Well, I'm siphoning. That's why I'm sucking. I put this end down in my tank, and I get a little water going into a bucket.
I take it you're going to do a water change since you're sucking today.
We've talked about this before, but you kind of told me to leave it alone, but I've been doing regular water changes, but not really big ones, just kind of cleaning that sand, maybe like 10 to 15 gallons once a week.
All right, Jimmy, congratulations. You're doing a couple things right off the bat, and you didn't even know you were doing it right.
That's how I roll. That's how I roll, dude.
Doing regular water changes. When it comes to water changes, there's three main schools of thought. And we'll talk about why you do a water change in a minute, but since you're talking about doing regular ones, one approach is you do a regular water change. Once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever. Whatever your timeline is, you do it, and you do it religiously no matter what. The other train of thought is do it when your tank needs it. Usually this is predicated by high nutrients that you need to lower, or you're trying to raise some tank parameter like alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium. The other train of thought around water changes is you do no water changes ever, and then you just supplement your tank for things that it needs like calcium, magnesium, and trace elements. I hover between two trains of thought, and it depends on the tank. One is to do a regular water changes. All my tanks up to this one, I just did once a week, 5% water change. I started that with my old 90-gallon tank about 10 years ago, and it worked great. You said earlier today when we talked that your tank is looking great. You feel like the corals are doing well. Is that still true?
Oh yeah, you gotta see them, dude. Since you were here last, this Vargas cestrularia. Did I say it right?
Just remember, you're sticking with the Vargas, Jimmy. You just said Vargas. That's all you need.
The Vargas, he's like taking over that rock, and he's like growing everywhere. But I'm definitely seeing an increase in size. No, I think it's looking awesome. I mean, my wife even made a comment. She goes, "Oh, this looks as good as when we go to the aquarium, when we go out to the big aquariums, or when we go to the fish store." She's like, "It looks as good as those." I'm like, "Yeah."
So a 5% weekly water changes for you is working. Stick with it. So you're going to be in the once a week 5% water change. Now, why would you want to do a water change? You hit one of them on the head is you want to take some unsightly stuff out of your tank, whether that be a little algae growth on your rocks or your sand bed. When you do water change, you grab that siphon tube of yours. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that one. And you siphon out the sand or the rocks and you can get rid of stuff. Other reasons to do water changes is one, you want to lower your nutrients. If you have high nitrates, high phosphates, you bring in fresh salt water, which should have no nitrates and phosphates, and you're going to lower those nutrient levels. Another reason to do it is to ideally raise other levels in your tank. Alkalinity, calcium, magnesium. You bring in your salt mix. If it's a good salt mix, it should have higher levels of those elements because the levels in your tank are getting used up by your corals, which is a good thing. The thing about tank parameters, you've probably heard this a lot. It's all about stability, right? You hear that? People like you want to keep things stable in your tank. So this is one reason I like small, regular water changes, 5%. You're making little bumps in your tank, little tweaks. Like you on the track, if you're going around the track, you don't want to be going like this, right? You want to be pretty smooth with your inputs kind of stuff. Same thing with the tank. We do a large water change, we can send tank parameters on a roller coaster. We don't want that. We want the teapot ride at Disney. So a small water change lets us make little tweaks without making big changes.
Okay, so you taught me how to do water changes, but I've been kind of on my own for a while and I haven't really recapped this with you. So please let me share with you what I'm doing, and then you stop me or tell me if I'm doing it right. Here we go. This is what I'm doing once a week. I come in here usually on the weekend. I vacuum. I get all that crud off the bottom. I use 5-gallon buckets. I dump them down the sink. When I've done that, I wheel in my bucket of salt water that I made the week before. And then I fill it back up with my zero pump. And then I go back into my mixing station and I make water from my RODI unit bucket, transfer that in. I mix with my Seashade Voyager pump. And I use my little Hana salinity checker, and I get it right up to 35, and I leave it run for about a day. I always have to check it like a day later because it's always off, just a little bit. And then I tweak that salinity till it's right on, and then that salt water is ready for the next water change.
Nearly perfect. One point I would put in there, I would not add the salt into your mixing vat until a day or two before you want to do your water change. There's a hack around that, but let's go into the reason why. I've found that when you mix up salt water, even if you leave the pump in there agitating all the time, or you don't agitate the water, the alkalinity level starts to drop in that salt mixing vat. So in your case, you're doing a water change because you want to bump that alkalinity a little bit. Well, you may actually be pulling down your alkalinity or not helping it being raised because it's the same as your tank or lower. So I like to mix up at the very minimum a couple hours before you do the water change, ideally a day or two. Now, if you want to have some salt water on hand, one thing that I will do is I'll get it pretty close to 35, like 28-ish or so. And that way, if you need to do an emergency water change, you can easily throw in a couple cups of salt, and it's going to be a fresh salt mix, but you don't have to bring it up as much. So the only thing I would change is mix up your salt a day or two beforehand. I wouldn't mix it up immediately and let it sit.
Boy, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be Jimmy Newbie Reefer. I don't feel like a newbie anymore. I'm talking like, am I going to graduate from newbie?
We'll call you Jimmy Semi-Newbie Reefer. How's that?
Semi-newbie.
Jimmy Semi-Newbie Reefer. That's your new title. We'll have to change the whole series.
No, I definitely feel it's still very new. There's a lot of stuff I don't know, but I have learned a lot, and thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, look, one of the keys is to always be learning. I'm always learning stuff. I like sharing this stuff so people like you and everyone else can flatten the learning curve. Because look, honest feedback, is keeping a saltwater tank as hard as you thought and were maybe even scared of before you got yours?
You've asked this question on a few other shows because I'm learning along the way, and the answer is still the same. No, it's not as hard as I thought it would be. But yeah, there's a lot of maintenance, and fortunately I've had you as a resource to teach me all this stuff. And then I also go to, I can go back and watch our videos and other videos here on SaltwaterAquarium.com's YouTube channel, and there's so much content there for me to learn things. So I thank you for that.
Awesome. Well, look, I'll get out of your way. I'll let you go back to sucking with your water change. I'm out, man. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, dude. I got to finish my water change. Thanks, dude.